Let's talk about this quite quickly. Joining us now is political analyst Alan Odero. He's joining us from Nairobi. Alan, thank you so much for your time. I'd like to find out from you, how hot is Nairobi? How burning is Kenya at this point?
Well, thank you very much for having me. So Kenya is not burning. After the dramatic incident that we had at the beginning of the week, the invasion of private property on Monday and everything, and the laxity by the security officers to respond has been calm. But just like the security officers kind of cordoned off the CBD last week, that's what we've heard again once today. Yeah, the CBD has been cordoned off. The protesters have not had access, but they've made processions around in various neighborhoods around the city. It was calm until maybe 1 hour ago when the police lobbed tear gas to bar the procession from marching to. It was suspected that they were marching onto some grounds called Jacaranda grounds in a part of Nairobi called Donholm. But so far, the city has been relatively quiet ever since the dramatic incidents like 2 days ago.
I see.
So far, I would say it's all calm. Yeah, thank you.
Which is what a lot of people have been, concerned about. The protest, when it began, 1 p.m. Kenyan time, had been, very peaceful, like you said, up until the last hour when police decided to fire tear gas I couldn't tell why, but, was that a very responsible move on the part of the police?
Not really. Just like I said last week, the protests, contrary to what those who criticize the public protests and picketing hold, the protests are normally peaceful until our trigger-happy security officers are the ones who mess things up. Because once you lob tear gas, any opportunist who wanted to maybe loot, wanted to mug people, any criminals would become part of that procession. Then the next day, you read the press report that they were looting, that the protesters kind of looted property. But at times, just in every marketplace where we've got all sorts of characters, it's possible that there are criminals or petty criminals who will be part of the procession. So that confusion whereby tear gas is lobbed and there's a firing of bullets, or maybe live bullets, that's when the criminals take advantage. So just like this, you're right, it was all peaceful until the police fired tear gas and provoked in their thinking that, and then after all, the Constitution allows everyone to picket and protest. Our Constitution only demands of us to notify the police, not with a view towards seeking permission, but rather so that they can provide security. It's the old Constitution that we repealed when we inaugurated the new one in August 2010, whereby back then police had the power to either approve or ban a procession. Right now, you only need to notify the police so that they provide security. So as things stand, really, it's basically a breach of constitutional provisions for the police to kind of make unilateral decisions about banning, as the media is falsely reporting, local media is falsely reporting, banning or allowing processions. So even the reaction of lobbing tear gas basically muddies the waters. It's ruined what would have been like a calm day, because in that very, very confusion whereby it was all calm until the police lobbed tear gas.
Yes.
Certainly, there are opportunists who might have broken into stalls, broken into shops, and then tomorrow you'll see our headlines that rowdy protesters rowdy protesters break into business premises, which is not actually true.
But talk to us about what happened. So did that disperse the crowd?
So far, it was within a residential neighborhood, so basically people just scatter. But then it became basically running battles between the youth and then the police. But then they don't entirely go away because they lob tear gas within a path, or maybe within a short stretch. That was a residential neighborhood, so. It's kind of, so it's what happened. The opposition kind of motorcade basically just changes direction to throw them off balance.
I see.
But we still have until 6 p.m. Kenyan time that the law permits us to engage in public meetings.
Looking at Alan, I apologize that I'm rushing you, but looking at what local media has reported so far, we know that in Mathare, protesters decided to throw stones at police unprovoked. We also know that somewhere else in Imara Dayama, the police decided to fire tear gas at boda drivers who are taunting them. Look, is this getting out of hand?
Not really, not really, not really. Okay, so we have a very difficult relationship with the police in the sense that our political history under the 24 years of, basically 40 years of the previous Kanu dictatorship. So those who became of age at that time, the youth generally have a controversial relationship with the police. At that, when a group of heavily armed police in riot gear arrive, descend on a neighborhood, even if they are just carrying out maybe a patrol, it's normal that the youth would kind of get jittery. So that explains the stone throwing, as you call it. And then regarding the border incident, that could have been just maybe a tense situation regarding an exchange. Maybe the people didn't really know what their intentions were. Yeah, but that's not really strange in Kenya. But then so it only gets worse when when the so-called lobbing of tear gas and firing of rubber bullets results into casualties or maybe deaths of protesters. But so far, nothing. And compared to the other week was worse in terms of the destruction of property and then the loss of life. But for Monday, we had like 2 loss of life, which is still unacceptable. And then destruction of property late in the night, in an incident that kind of was. It wasn't just and
I'd want us to look at some of those incidents, the burning and destruction of properties. But right now, we know that today, the Interior Cabinet Secretary has announced that whether or not you have a permit or police green lights to protest, protests are generally banned. Do you think that will work against these opposition protests?
Thank you very much. The statement is issued is kind of ambiguous because the media, our local media, has gone to report as protests are banned. But if you read the fine print of his statement, he talked of violent demonstrations. So it becomes a contest of how do you qualify violence? Like does anyone have the unilateral power to preempt and maybe declare a demonstration as violent and maybe come up with grounds of interfering with it? So contrary to his statement, we've had the Azimio coalition, Raila Odinga making trips around the city, from Gong Road all the way to Imara Daima, all the way to where I'm telling you in Donholm. So far, we didn't have an incident until the police lobbed tear gas like 1 hour ago, when they suspected that the procession was marching onto a public grounds called the Jacaranda grounds for a mega rally. Whatever reason they did that remains, it's anyone's guess. But up to that point, it wasn't really, things had not really gotten out of hand. So, and then further, we have a very liberal constitution right now, a very judicious population. It's highly probable that a group of Kenyans will probably go to court to challenge the constitutionality of the directive by the Minister of Interior the other day. It really doesn't have the power to unilaterally ban protests or demonstrations because the law only requires one to provide sufficient notice to the police and request them for security. The police by themselves don't necessarily have the power because right to association, that's basically an inalienable right by our constitution.
Absolutely.
The police or maybe no government officer has the power to unilaterally, either they don't really have the power to permit people the freedom to go for demonstration or picketing. It's
Absolutely.
Only based on security concerns that when there can be mitigating measures, but the threshold, it will take quite some hard convincing that the threshold has been met to kind of outlaw, unless we were in a state of emergency.
I see.
Thank you.
I want us to look at some of the events that have happened since the protest started. We've seen destruction to opposition property. We've seen destruction to property of the former President Uhuru Kenyatta. We've seen destruction to UDA offices. And, we've also seen the burning of a church and mosque in Kibra. Now, I want us to talk about the fact that in the midst of all this, all the mayhem that has gone on amidst the demonstration, what we have not seen is to hear from the president of Kenya, William Ruto. Is that a source of concern for you? Or perhaps, people are already speaking on his behalf and it's fine?
Well, thank you very much. So the president was out of the country for a 4-day working tour in Belgium and Germany. He's just returned today morning, but certainly there is an operational structure within government. When he was out of the country, we had the deputy president who was basically acting, could have gone as a president. we had the entire government structure working. So he made a statement while he was in Berlin about condemning the violence and talking about the need to uphold the rule of law. He indicated that those who are culpable will be kind of face the full force of the law. So far, he's attempted to make a statement, but I'm certainly sure that the country really needs to hear much more from him. So as he settles in, there are already rumors in the country about serious changes going to be made in government. There's a kind of a split within the ruling coalition about the performance or the errors of omission or commission by the police service. The other day, the Inspector General of Police, especially the country, was quite concerned about the invasion of the property of the former President Uhuru Kenyatta.
So Alan, just quickly, how much influence or what impact do you think the Kenyan people hearing directly from President Ruto would be right now? How much impact could it have on the situation in the country right now?
Well, certainly because he is in control of the government apparatus. Basically, he's the head of state, he's the head of government. By our constitutional provision, it's basically a symbol of national unity. So it would be good if he could maybe address the country, calm the waters. That would certainly be good. But certainly, we appreciate that the country is heavily polarized politically. The country, politically speaking, is currently even split down the middle. Raila Odinga coalition with one half of the country, and the president also is constitutionally also validated by the Supreme Court, certainly holding another half or maybe quote unquote of the country. But certainly, there are so far efforts both externally and within the country to have the two leaders get to a dialogue. But then we need to watch out so that it doesn't it's not reduced to an elite kind of deal making, as we saw under the handshake between Uganda and Raila Odinga the other day. The concern of the other people right now is if these two people on the streets feel that we need a structured dialogue, we don't really need to reduce it to a conversation between two individuals, two elites. Because there's a danger that when the two get to the negotiating table, the conversation that they have in private, there's a possibility that the concerns of the masses won't really find space at the negotiating table.
So how do you suggest the masses are moved along?
Structured dialogue in the sense that the country needs to have a clarity in terms of what are the issues, because Raila Odinga has remained stuck with the so-called electoral issues, while a significant mass of the country is quite keen on the economic reforms, quite keen on the state of the economy. So until the country kind of comes to a united position in terms of what are the 3 or 4 issues that we need to discuss about, it still remains difficult. But certainly, there's a possibility whereby the two sides can come up with a bipartisan approach, maybe select a committee or something, or a technical working committee, come up with agree on the agenda. Then whether we agree whether we want to approach it to constitutional reforms, or maybe through a give and take in terms of the various issues, in terms of maybe inclusivity in government, or maybe appointment of the electoral commissioners to the new electoral commission. That's the way to go. But shouldn't be reduced to a conversation or a deal making between two individuals.
Alan, we have to go now. But my final question to you is: we see some international pressure coming in. We've heard from the AU chairperson who's called for dialogue. We know that the opposition has already started speaking with the U.S. Senator Chris Coons spoke with opposition leader Raila Odinga. Look, where do you think this can get the nation right now? Could it impact, the outcome of today's demonstration, in that there will be no demonstration from next week?
That's premature because all these engagements were made before today. Remember, Chris Coons and all these guys, the clergy met Raila Odinga yesterday and also met the other wing of they are the ruling coalition, part of the ruling coalition. But they prevailed upon Raila to call up the press and allow for dialogue. But he's insisted that Kenyans will solve their problems internally, that we don't really need external influence. That's why addressing the Western powers. So certainly, he's gone to the streets today, the picketing and all that. But a day is a long time in politics, like they say. Let's see what happens between now and over the weekend into Monday.
Let's see, indeed. Thank you so much, Alan. Alan, thank you so much for your time and insight on this matter. We wish you the very best. I appreciate your time. Alan Odero is a political analyst who joined us from Kenya. We've been discussing the protests ongoing in that country. This is the third installment of such called by the opposition. We'll keep an eye on this. We'll follow up and let you know how it's going. But that'll be all from us this week on The Square. Join us same time Monday here on News Central TV. I am Kemini Amana. Remember always to stay safe.